Hey, this is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan. Well, I caught a recent episode of Dr. Oz, and it was so absurd, so ridiculous, I just had to share it with you guys. In fact, he had someone who I featured on my show here like a year and a half ago, Chris Powell of the Extreme Makeover diet. He's one of those guys that like gets people and works them out to death on high protein, low calorie, low carbohydrate diets to try to get them to lose weight quickly. Anyway, he's all about this thing called carb cycling, where you have some days where you have very little carbs and other days you have a little bit more but not too much. Anyway, they're both here to show us how horrible carbs are.
Bad carbs. And I hate to call food groups bad, but these are the carbs that you just don't want around you. What are the ones we're going to eliminate?
They're bad carbs, but they're so darn tasty. That's the only thing about them, and that's why it's so hard for people to give them up, because people have a love affair with these carbs. These are the sugary, processed carbs. You got donuts and pastries and cookies and bread and pasta. And
all right, WTF is going on here? Are my eyes deceiving me? On this plate of bad carbs, do I see donuts alongside potatoes and rice?
Well, here's the deal.
But potatoes and rice are here too.
They are. And here's the deal.
All right, Chris, what's the deal? How are potatoes and rice just as bad for you as glazed donuts?
We don't want to completely eliminate these. These are the wonderful foods for a reward day, for that day off that you have. Right. You know, which is really important to reset our bodies psychologically, emotionally, and also physiologically. So yes, while we don't want to eat these kinds of carbs all the time, having them a little bit in moderation is okay, but we want to eliminate them from most of the days of our diet.
So basically, Chris has no answer for Dr. Oz's question how donuts and potatoes and rice are all the same kind of bad carbs. Something's wrong here. And let's take a look at Chronometer so I can prove it to you. Well, first of all, let's look at a true high-carb food like a potato here. Almost all its calories come from carbs, just 6% or so from protein, and 1% of its calories come from fat. While a glazed donut, on the other hand, because that's what he seemed to be showing there, one with some kind of candy sprinkles sprinkled on top. Anyway, let's take a look. Well, almost all its calories, about 48% of its calories, come from friggin' fat. How can that be a high-carb food? I mean, it has the same percent of calories from fat as a McDonald's Big Mac does. It just makes me want to do a big, giant face palm every time I see nutritional advice on these TV doctor shows here. How can a food that's got the same fat percentage of calories as a Big Mac be lumped in as a high-carb food? Completely stupid. Well, apparently they're not against all carbs. Let's see what they consider to be good carbs.
Good carbs that you can moderate.
These are beautiful carbs here. These are the carbs. These are true complex carbohydrates. They're high in fiber, loaded with vitamins and minerals. They're broken down extremely slowly in our systems and trickled. And as they're broken down, that blood, or that the sugar is trickled ever so beautifully into our blood to give us sustained energy for hours. This is the good kind of carbs that's going to keep us full. It's going to keep us energized. It's going to give us a lot of fiber so our digestive system's working properly. This is the good stuff right here.
So again, you get the whole grains, the quinoas of the world, whole grain pasta, which works also, yams. So you have alternatives to what we just saw on the other side.
Well, they sound good. Sounds like we should be able to eat these good carbs all we want.
The day off diet allows for 2 servings of complex carbs a day. So you don't have to eliminate them, you just have to moderate them.
WTF, since they're so good for us, all these whole food grains and all that, why should we have to moderate them? I thought we need to moderate things that give us cancer, like, bacon.
It gets back to something we always stress, which is moderation.
Which is moderation.
Is moderation?
Can be very healthy again in moderation.
Why would I want to moderate something that's completely healthy for me? Is there something wrong with carbs? Do they do something bad to us?
This is the body. Right? So when you eat carbs, and we're both going to eat our carbs at the same time. You get the good ones, I get the bad ones. I've got sugar, you got something that's more whole grainy, right? Right? Bad carbs are super simple. They're so simple that the body immediately converts them to fat.
Wow.
Because there's no work to do to digest them. The good carbs, they're more complex. That's why they're called complex carbs. They're filled with nutrients and fibers that Chris mentioned. So your body doesn't quite have its energy to pull it apart. It doesn't have quite the ability to turn it to fat like mine. So what ends up happening is after you eat the meal, my body has got love handles, and Chris's body doesn't.
Oh my God, that's got to be one of the stupidest demonstrations I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, is he serious? Does he really think this is what literally happens to our bodies?
And as simple as I can state it, that's literally what happens in your body.
Wow, Dr. Oz literally believes that to be true. That stuff like white rice, when you eat it, it's a bad carb, it gives you love handles. Well, if that were really true, people that eat tons of rice, white rice, should have higher rates of obesity than those who don't. Well, let's look at this world map of obesity here, and let's take a look at Asia. Interesting how these high rice eating nations like China and Korea, Vietnam, they have the lowest rates of obesity in the world compared to, look, everywhere else. All the developed nations like the United States that don't eat much rice, strangely way more obese. And let's take a look here at this other graph here. I look on the far left. Korea, I mean, look at such low obesity compared to, say, the rest of the world. Yeah, Dr. Oz and Chris Powell here are doing nothing other than perpetuating the myth that when you eat carbs, the sugars in them easily turn into love handle fat. Well, let's look at the published research on this. Well, there's absolutely no disagreement about this. That is a false myth. Let's take a look here at this one study on carbohydrate intake and obesity on healthy adults. They concluded that consuming a low carbohydrate diet is associated with a greater likelihood of being overweight or obese. Low carb makes you overweight or obese. The process of converting carbs into fat is a process known as de novo lipogenesis, and that's exactly what this study took a look at. And Dr. Oz would want you to believe this is a slam dunk process. Eat some bad carbs like rice and it turns into fat. Well, this study it concluded that de novo lipogenesis is not the pathway of first resort for added dietary carbohydrates in humans. Meaning that carbs don't readily turn into fat and stick on your love handles like Dr. Oz says they do. So I found this episode of Dr. Oz not only full of misinformation, I just think that its general effect on your average person is to confuse them about carbs.
And you guys are all probably struggling right now with the difference between the different kind of carbs. I can eat one, but not the other. They seem so similar. I mean, yams are under the ground, so are potatoes. Right?
Post your questions and comments down below. Are you fed up like I am watching these doctor TV shows, just spreading this crap information that we know is completely wrong based on our experiences and the scientific research out there? Carbs don't readily turn into fat, guys. They don't. All right, so post your questions and comments there. Like this video if you got something out of this. Now that I've turned my attention to Dr. Oz here instead of just Dr. Stork, share this video with a friend that thinks carbs are going to make them fat. They avoid rice and potatoes because of that, and instead they eat Big Macs and donuts. And subscribe if you're new to our channel here at Happy Healthy Vegan for more from me and Angie. And until next time, screw these stupid doctors and trainers. Keep it carved, baby. Keep it carved. Eat some rice and potatoes. I didn't really want to say anything, but does anyone else think that Chris Powell here, even though he works out his muscles and stuff, he's got dad bod? I don't know. Just saying.